Hello and welcome to the Leaders in Cleantech podcast. I'm David Hunt, CEO and founder of the Hyperion Cleantech Group and your host for the Leaders in Cleantech podcast. Now, eagle-eared and eyed amongst you would have probably recognized I said I'd be in Prague this week, which I will be, but it's tomorrow, not today. So today we're online. Next week I'll be coming from Prague. Today I've got a guest I've been eager to get onto the podcast for quite some time since we met at an International Energy Association event back in tail end of last year. So without further ado, we've got Domenico Traverso, who's president of Danfoss Editron and also responsible for incubation at Danfoss. Domenico, great to have you with us.
Thank you, David. Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
It does feel like an awful long time ago, that event in Sonderburg. I think it was maybe October, November time last year.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
Time flies.
Yeah.
So listen, there's loads that I wanted to cover with you. It would be good to start, as we always do, with a little bit of your backstory, because you've been an entrepreneur rather than an entrepreneur for some time. But perhaps you can just share a little bit of your backstory before joining Danfoss and your particular role at the moment.
Yeah, sure. First of all, I don't know if everybody knows what is an entrepreneur, and rather than an entrepreneur. We can say it in many ways. In my case, the entrepreneur is a wannabe entrepreneur. Someone that wanted to be an entrepreneur all life, and for some reason, life take you in ways. And at the end, really, I always stayed with in the corporate world and with multinationals and so on.
Yeah.
So if you were asking me probably 20 years ago, I would have told you really by the age of 50, I will be running my own company and so on. But it didn't go that way, and I'm actually happy to be here. And this brings us to the entrepreneur part. That because I think of my desire, my interest for entrepreneurship and for running my own business, I've always been the one that in the corporate world was running the independent companies, the standalone companies. I've done turnarounds for many years. Before Danfoss, I worked at GKN as a large British group, and also at GKN I was doing turnarounds and carve out and running independent businesses, and so that's what I've done all my life basically. And Danfoss has been so good with me that at the end I always have the feeling that I'm running my own business, even if it's technically not my own. But I have a level of autonomy, independencies, and I could make things in Danfoss that as an entrepreneur even would have been difficult, right?
Right.
So that's for me being an entrepreneur, like an entrepreneur inside a company.
Right. Yeah. And that's a little bit different from purely running a division or running a team. And we'll explore in the conversation perhaps a little bit more of that, because as you say, it really is entrepreneurial within an organization rather than obviously purely as a startup as such. But it's a bit more involved and it gives you more scope from what you've just touched on there than purely running a division or running a business within a group.
Yeah, I think it's it gives you more in a way because you have all the structure and the support of a large corporation. But on the other side, if you're left with enough autonomy, I think you can really be in this sweet spot where you are running your own business, but on the other side, you are a protector, you have a structure, you have also the learning, and that also in the technology world, for instance, right? The spread of that can offer you a company behind you.
Yeah. So one of the things that's been great when we first got introduced is, and it's, I think, maybe 2 or 3 years ago, we had on the podcast Kimmo Rauma from Editron not long after the acquisition by Danfoss. And clearly you're working with Kim and you're now responsible for the Editron business, which is really fascinating. Well, I'd like to touch on that briefly before we cover a bit more of the entrepreneurship and the innovation and how startups can benefit from working with corporations like Danfoss and GKN, who you mentioned before. But Editron is electrifying or providing the electrification drivetrains for heavy transport stuff, and I was fascinated when obviously we were together in Sonderburg. We're looking at everything from ferries to construction equipment. So perhaps you can just share a little bit of the specific technologies and areas of decarbonisation of transport that you're currently involved with Danfoss.
But yeah. So as we all see, really, we are in a major technological transformation. We see it in the car industries, on the, let's say, on highway transportation, logistic, and also on the construction and agricultural side is coming. Actually, really those machines in construction, especially, are the one polluting the most because they are gigantic machinery, and of course they have huge diesel engines and so on. And this is where the transformation also would have a bigger impact. Now, as you know, Danfoss is one of the biggest provider in the world of hydraulic solutions. So hydraulic solution is one of the things that in the years will be disrupted by electric. So that at the beginning I think for a number of years will be probably more like living together with electrification, but step by step, we can see there is already a level of disruption happening where hydraulics is being replaced by electric. And think about this transformation started also years ago. Think about the forklift truck, right? They are mostly electric now, and now it's happening in bigger and bigger machinery. So I think for us, there's the real scope of Editron long term is to disrupt hydraulics in a way, right? So we want to disrupt hydraulics from internally and not having someone from outside really disrupting hydraulics, being one of the big player in hydraulics in the world. Now, beside this, which is still a bit of a niche for the moment, there are a lot of other activities that we can do. You mentioned some of these. The electrification is a little bit more mature, apart from cars. It is a little bit more mature, for instance, on the ferries or now some marine application. Electrification on marine is not new, or agri system on marine, they're not new. We focus on, we have some on highway application, of course. We have part of the business is focusing on an highway application because it's already more mature, of course.
Yeah.
Really. Even if I would say really our long-term goal is still on agriculture and construction, because this is where we play today as Danfoss. And Danfoss also is a very environmental driven company, right? It's a very green company. We everything we do has somehow to do something to do with the reducing emission and going decarbonisation. From the climate solutions that we do to the drive, everything is focused as a group in reducing emission and decarbonizing. Yeah. And so, Editron, of course, play a big role because every time also we can replace it, diesel engine or a more a traditional solution with an electrified solution on a large machine. Of course, we contribute significantly to decarbonization. It's a process; it will take some years, but we are playing a role in that.
Yeah. I think one of the things that came from the talk that we did back at that event was that globally there's the equivalent of a city the size of Paris being constructed every year. So the amount of construction that's going on is phenomenal and continues to be so.
Yes.
And as we touched on before, that the machinery involved is massively carbon intensive, usually big diesel generators, big diesel trucks, etc. So the actual impact of electrifying that in itself is quite significant, as well as some of the other areas where Danfoss are playing with efficiency in other parts of buildings. Once that the manufacturing and the operation of buildings, I should say, rather than the construction, but also this part in the construction phase is fairly impactful.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And don't take me wrong. We still, as Danfoss, we still play a big role in reducing emission where hydraulics is used. I think we have some of the most energy efficient hydraulic solutions in the world. Some is really stunning. Like we have this digital pumps that we can reduce emission now up to 50% on an excavator.
Yeah.
Which is enormous if you think about it, the pollution excavator. But if we can make that electric, that would make it extremely efficient and totally carbon neutral. That would be.
Let's pick back up on your point, Domenico, about innovation, because we all know of the headline companies like Kodak who disrupted from outside, even though they had the technology, and of course Netflix, who were or Blockbuster, I should say, who had the opportunity to buy Netflix and didn't. So there's lots of stories we know about incumbents who died basically because they didn't innovate or disrupt. But you're talking about a view where you internally disrupt yourselves and your core markets by looking at innovation. How is that within an organization? Because it's very tough if your core markets and revenues come from existing technologies to disrupt yourself and to have the courage to do that.
Yeah, and I think in that it helps a lot, both the Danfoss mindset, but also Danfoss organizational setup. And this is where also the entrepreneurial approach is coming on, and also I think it helps also we are a family business, so we still have a high level of high degree of independence in that way. We are organized by product lines, and each product line. I'm not saying we work in silos. There is a high level of collaboration, but still, who is responsible for the product line is responsible for the product line, for the full P&L, for the full value chain. And in that way, I think if we can run the business like the electrification business without having too many compromise with other businesses. It is accepted. It's very shared. The view, I think, also from the colleagues that are making solutions, hydraulic solution that can be disrupted. They rather prefer to be disrupted by Editron than by someone else. So in general, there is a very strong alignment on the strategy of the company, and also on the fact really that it's very clear that everybody has to do their own, and we have very clear roles and responsibility within the company.
Right.
So this clarity of purpose helps a lot really to avoid these conflicts and to avoid, what happens exactly in the Kodak and Blockbuster things. So people doing my job, usually we got like a small poster of Kodak and Blockbuster in our office because that's exactly what we don't want to be, right?
Yeah. But it's still really, really is interesting that how you go about that mindset, I think, is actually clearly an important fact. The fact you're independent and obviously not reporting to shareholders or to a board in the way maybe contributes positively. But the mindset thing is really interesting because again, there's a balance, I guess, between internal innovation and also acquisition and working with other startups and acquiring startups. What sort of mix has the organization view on how it should innovate internally purely on its own resources and how it should bring in either collaborating with or acquiring startup organizations?
But I think it cannot be black or white, honestly. It wouldn't work if you do all the innovation just by acquisition. Then you will have a long list of business that probably you don't know how to run, you don't know how to manage them. On the other side, if you try to develop everything internally, it will take ages and you're out of business anyway. Right. So you really need to find the sweet spot, the right balance for those things. And also, especially on technologies, and electrification is a very good example. The investment is not ending with the acquisition.
Right.
The investment is starting with the acquisition. So if you think really, I take all the money I have, I make a very cool acquisition on electrification, and that's it. And now I'm a player. You're not a player. You just destroying value.
Yeah.
So that you need to have enough money that you can do the acquisition, and then you can build on that. You can keep investing internally with your internal resources and just multiplicating, accelerating what you have acquired.
Yeah.
This is very different than acquiring mature business, of course, wherever you have maybe the post-merger integration activities and so on. But it's more about how do we capture synergies. In these high-tech technology acquisitions or electrification acquisition, it's not about capturing synergies. It's more about really building all the acquisition you have made and keep investing at a high pace.
Yeah.
And scaling those technology. It's a completely different game.
It is indeed, and I won't mention the names, but there's one particular large corporation that's acquired 3 of our clients over the last number of years, and all 3 the CEOs and founders have ended up leaving, and the companies have continued, but I don't think they've made the best usage of their acquisitions, if that makes sense. So again, there's something in the mindset or the corporation or the organization where acquisitions are stifled or swamped by existing cultures and corporations, and others where they're able to thrive. Because I spoke with Kimo at the event also, and he's obviously stayed with the business, continues to do very well within the business, and he himself likewise is still feeling like an entrepreneur, even though he sold his company essentially to the organization.
Yeah, and first of all, you're right. Kimo is a real entrepreneur. So it's like he's someone that did it. He knows how to do these things, and he has the creativity, the mindset of an entrepreneur, which is I think is fantastic. It's clearly not easy for entrepreneurs to fit in an organization in a corporate environment.
Yeah.
It's a very delicate process. If you've been the CEO of your own company, then being part of, as you say, really as of a division, an organization, and a larger setup where you have functional leaders, and you have, even if we are not extremely, Danfoss is not in a having metrics, but still we do have functions and we do have processes and so on, and we may not have the agility, of course, really the startup company or your own company have. I mean, those independent technology companies, often they have agility when they want to have it. Maybe they're even less agile in other things, to be frank. But the owner, an entrepreneur, decide where he wants to be agile, when he wants to have the quick decisions and so on.
Yeah.
This is structure in a corporate environment. So you cannot decide where you want to be agile and where you don't. Really, we all try to be more agile as possible. We try to be light and empowered and so on. And I think in Danfoss we're pretty good, given the size of the company. We are a 10 billion euros company, and I think we are still pretty agile, pretty quick, empowered, and so on. However, it cannot be comparable with your own company when you are an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
So I think it requires a little flexibility and tolerance from both sides. I see these things failed very, very often. It's not easy. I think it's not easy for entrepreneur and CEO to fit in a large corporate environment. On the other side, sometimes we make it work. I think really like the collaboration with Kimmo is excellent, and it brings a lot of value on the table. And I think, and also we need to give him credit really that he's also willing to accept some of the corporate structure. Boundaries and so on. That you also have to be ready to accept it and to play with it in a way, right? To be part of that organizational setup.
Yeah, the mindset thing is important. So talking about your own experience, Domenico, because implementing and incubating and bringing new bodies into an organization is complex. You have on one side, as you say, all the structures and processes that are required for running a corporation. So the sort of the operational side. And then, of course, on the other side, as we've touched on with Kimmo, you have a very much a strong challenge often when you're integrating or acquiring or bringing new entities into the business from a culture and from a sort of personal development point of view. Which of those areas do you find the most rewarding and which most challenging? They may or may not be the same thing, but the integration of the operations and mechanics of the systems and processes, or the integration of the culture and the teams and the people during these processes?
But I would say for sure the people side is always the most complicated and is also the more rewarding, and but is the one that is the one thing that does the magic basically. So if you manage to make the people side work, the organizational part work, and so on, then the big part is done. Now there are several type of businesses that can fall into incubation like division like ours or this kind of activities. There are for sure the new technologies where you already have a revenue and you need to scale it faster. Then you have the new technology where it's a new technology, new business, and you don't have any revenue yet, but it will come. And then you can also have, even if incubation is not a turnaround house, you can have still the turnarounds where you have maybe technology business and so on, which are just underperforming, even in their technology growth or performance. And then you need to have a completely different approach. Now, in all these three things, I mean, there's no favorite or less favorite. I think they're all super intriguing, and the big difference they make it the people at the end. Really, it's if it is a pleasure or less a pleasure to work with, it depends really on how the people are sticking together, are being a united team. And so usually it's less of a pleasure when you have a lot of conflicts, of course, when the business is struggling or is not getting the result they want, and then they start really to have internal attrition or conflict and so on. When even if the business is struggling or there are problems, but the team is very united and so on, first of all, you see that they're going to make it anyway, but also really is more, even in the challenge, is more pleasure to deal with it. And then your role, like in my case, the role will become you stay back and you let them do, and you more have advising or maybe trying to become a sounding board rather than someone providing direction. I mean, you don't give direction, you let them do, and you more like try really to coach or to learn or to understand and to be more maybe the big brother trying to help. When in the other cases it can be different, then you need to have a more direct involvement and so on. So it's very diverse. I mean, this is also the fascinating part of this kind of roles, really, that they're very diverse, and even in a corporate world, you can have all kind of different situations.
Mm-hmm. Going back to entrepreneurs who maybe many I know listen to the podcast, because at the moment it's very difficult to get investment if you're a hardware company. Obviously, everybody wants to invest in SaaS or increasing their AI platforms. So if you have a hardware technology, it's a little more difficult sometimes to raise cash. So therefore, looking at an institutional investor, a strategic partner, either as an investor or as an acquirer, is perhaps a more attractive route. But perhaps some of the things that entrepreneurs should be thinking about if they are looking at that as a possible route to scale their business, i.e. joining an organization or being invested in by the CVC arm of a larger organization?
I think there are different models, and I think that the entrepreneurs should be very, very careful in what they're doing and which choices they're making. And I can see that very often the choices made by an entrepreneur, they're driven by the wrong reasons. And I think we had several examples in the last 12 months where we'll be scouting and talking to companies, entrepreneurs, and so on. And then we have seen that some companies has gone as being acquired or as being invested by other venture capital or corporation and so on. And I have the feeling that maybe that's not advice also for an entrepreneur. I mean, that you as an entrepreneur, you got to study the situation and try really to read what is going to be the best for your company. Maybe also be honest with yourself and say, really, okay, what's the purpose of what you're doing? I mean, are you trying to, you have a dream that you want the dream come true, and then really about your company, about the technology, about, a vision for your business, and it's not about what you want for yourself. Or really sometimes it's simply you want to maximize the money that you can get, and that's it, really. And sometimes being true to yourself about those two different things is really important and make a difference in the choices you're making. Because if you're honest to yourself and say really, and you're capable to say, fundamentally, I want to make money. It will give a lot of clarity, and it will help you also to make your choices. But if your choice is the dream is to develop your company, or to have a safe place for your employees in the future, or see your technologies, the thing you have invented, the thing in your heart that you have invented, you dedicated your best years, that is becoming famous things in the world, something that is changing the world and changing, you see it on the equipment on the road, and then you think, oh, what, it was me, it was my team, right? If you have this kind of pride, then you need to think in another way. And I think I understand it's not easy for entrepreneurs, and sometimes also, especially young entrepreneurs, that may not be prepared to make these kind of choices. They're big choices, and once you've made it, you cannot go back. And but I think there is the need of clarity on this, and sometimes it's easy to make the wrong step, and then we have either entrepreneurs that were very money driven that end up in larger organizations and that they don't fit because or others really that they had a dream and end up really with someone just trying to really to milk and sell it to the next in that 3 years. And it's not helping to your dream to come true. Then it's better you go with a large corporation that will help you really to develop. If your dream is to see your product on the equipment on the road, you need to go with another partner.
That's really interesting thoughts, actually, Domenico. That obviously all entrepreneurs by definition have some element of ego, because that's the nature of entrepreneurs and entrepreneurs. But it's really whether it is, as you say, ultimately around the valuation and the exit that we can celebrate and shout about, or like you say, actually achieving what you set out to do in the first place with your mission of your product or your service, and what's going to make that further come to success. And sometimes it's very hard. We work with a number of investors, where sometimes they need to replace the leadership team from a company they've acquired for various different reasons. And I think often entrepreneurs don't think about the consequences of whether they take VC money or strategic partnerships or the various routes, and what it will have an impact on them personally and their own dreams and aspirations, as well as on the company.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think that if you really think about your company, the best way to assess the situation is, first of all, take yourself out. So it's not what is the best for me, it's what is the best for the product, and then start to understand what is this more important for you. Maybe sometimes it can be also your organization. I know many entrepreneurs that are very attached to your organization. So if at the end it's your organization you want to protect, you want to develop, and so on, and you need to think about that angle. If it's more the product and the future development of the product and so on, then you really need to think blindly what is best for the product, and that's it. Everything else doesn't matter.
Yeah. No, thanks for insights on that. Let's jump back a little bit, Domenico, to innovation, because I know it's something that you're passionate about, and we touched on already sort of the willingness to disrupt yourself as an organization. How do you build this mindset into an organization, whether it's a smaller startup or obviously into a larger corporation like Danfoss, to have this mindset of always looking to improve, and to not just improve in an iterative process, but to think, how can we really disrupt what we're doing as well as what the market's doing?
But I think there are also there are two aspects, and if you live in a company which is usually highly innovative, is usually you don't really need to build a mindset of innovation, but you need to build a mindset that manage innovation, that give it a little bit of structure or discipline to innovation. So when you are in an organization where everybody is thinking to the next innovation or to the next things and so on, there is a lot of energy, there is a lot of competence, there is a lot of understanding and passion about the technology. And the risk is that all this gets wasted because it doesn't go anywhere, and or it doesn't reach it doesn't turn into a business case that you can really do something and so on. And so sometimes the trick, depending on the organization, of course, but the trick is, if your company is already innovative, usually you already have a big brain power in the organization. And the secret to scale innovation or to become more innovative is not having an innovative mindset, but is giving discipline to that mindset and making sure that it goes to the surface, that you can see it, that management can see it, that help those people that has great ideas to turn ideas into business case, into real business case, and not just in an idea. I got a great idea and we can make this new product, but that's it. It's not hit. I mean, we need to find it and press it, but we can see if it works. And the companies usually, right, in Danfoss we are, but I think in general, modern company, they're all willing really to assess and invest and pressure test the new technologies and so on. Most times they don't know. They don't know what technology they have. They don't know who has invented what and so on. It happened to me several times, and it was like a discovery all the time, to find out super great ideas from engineers working in the organization, that they try to explain their ideas or their dream, their innovation to someone else, and there's a colleague, direct supervisor, or whatever, and they've been told really, but you will never, do your work. It's not, what can you do with it? Nobody will ever listen. In reality, the companies are willing to listen. We are willing to listen, but I'm sure we are not the only one. I think all major companies really are willing to listen. You just don't know what to listen, and you need to find a way really to channel and to funnel those great ideas and give it a discipline. So I help people really to turn it into something more concrete.
So that's a leadership issue then, Domenico, you're talking about there. Actually, you talk about bringing discipline, but that again is looking how to manage and lead the teams who are innovating, the engineers and everybody else that's involved. So how much of a challenge is that for your leadership skills to oversee and to bring some of that discipline whilst also being very intuitive and listening to the ideas that are coming through?
I think I think it's not only a leadership problem, because it's always, we always say, oh, this is a leadership issue. In my view, this is not a leadership issue. It's a tool issue sometimes. So I think we need to make sure that employees and engineers, inventors, people with ideas, they find in the company the tools, the mentorship, the coaching to bring their ideas to the surface.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not necessary with the leadership means that within their organization that, they follow the hierarchy and so on. If you follow the hierarchy, you get lost for sure. You need to have a way outside the hierarchy where you can, you find someone in the company that helped you just putting together your ideas, maybe they challenge it a bit, and explain you how could you make a business case if you want to go to your boss instead of going, I have an idea on a piece of paper, and you say, really, I have an idea and this is the business case and this is the financials. And I understand really we don't have really coach trading in all companies in every corner, but there is in all companies there's a lot of knowledge, and there's more people willing to help than normally people think.
Yeah.
And just sometimes really trying to connect the dots with people, maybe with communities, with groups and so on. We just started a few weeks ago. I started just on a moment of enthusiasm. I started as a community. We have this internal social network, which was called is a Microsoft tool. It's called Yammer. Now it's called Viva, right? It's one of those internal social networks that you use to share communication, information. That you can have groups about everything and so on. I started new things just called Entrepreneurship Circle. And I started with nothing. I mean, just I thought it's 4 or 5 people, and they just share ideas about really, entrepreneurship ideas within a company. Now, I mean, in 2 weeks we got more than 100 members, and we got already people asking really, but what can we do? How can we use these things and so on? And actually, we find out that actually it's easy. When there's a lot of people, there's a lot of knowledge in this group. I mean, there's people from the engineers to vice presidents and so on. It doesn't matter really. We're all together in a small community of people just passionate about the same stuff.
Yeah.
And then if you have an idea, I'm sure 100%. Now it's a few weeks, so I can tell you maybe in some months I can tell you more. But I'm sure that if somebody has an idea, really, I have a great idea, but I don't know how to present it. I don't know how to pitch it.
Yeah.
I don't know really, is it a good idea or not? And you can just share it there, and then it doesn't count in your performance review, right? It's just a bunch of colleagues. But I can tell you, I mean, that I can give you this template if you want to make a business case. I can review it. Why don't you pitch the idea for me for 3 minutes, and then I tell you really if it's good or not, or what I think. I mean, for what it works.
Yeah.
I mean, and there is competent people. Those kind of things, it's not about leadership. It's more about providing people the tools to do things. And then you can have really the engineers that is pitching really to the CEO a great idea if it goes in the right way. We also have institutionalized more, yearly event or contest for new ideas and so on, like many companies has. This is also can be a way. But I don't think it's just in leadership. It's more about giving the people the tools to share their ideas.
Yeah. Yeah. So facilitating that and encouraging the ideas to come forth and not just remain in people's heads.
Yeah. And using the people you have, because there's a lot of people that is willing to help, regardless of their role or their job and so on. They're just willing to help. Because if anybody comes to me and say, Domenico, really, I would like, I have this idea. What do you think? I made this 3 slide. Just tell me I will totally take the time and look at it and give a feedback or have a discussion, and so I would be so happy to do it.
Yeah.
And there's so many people that would be as well happy, and depending on what your competence, you can find the right people everywhere.
Yeah. So the importance of that forum for people to do that. Taking your Danfoss hat off a little moment, just because you see obviously so much innovation both internally and externally from the Danfoss organization, and we know on the decarbonisation journey we really need to throw everything at the challenges that we face. Which areas of technology or which areas of decarbonisation excite you most in terms of impact that we would hope to see over the next 5 to 10 years?
Well, I think there are 2 areas because if I think short term, like what can really make a difference in the next 5 to 10 years, but like massive difference. In a way, it's more super efficient hydraulics, because we have it so much hydraulics in the machine today that it will be very, very difficult to change everything to electric in the next 5 years. But there are ways really to hybridize or to digitalize hydraulics in a way really that you can reduce consumption massively. I mean, I'm now, since a year, I'm involved in this business that it was an acquisition from Danfoss some time ago. And we have this digital pump that we make in Scotland. And now we keep working on this and perfectioning and so on. And now we see really it can reduce the consumption on an excavator by 50%.
Wow, okay.
It is so massive, and this could give such a big impact to the world, to the entire world, because the excavator are the most polluting machine in the world.
And there's lots of them.
If you think about electrifying excavator, is the way forward for sure. It will happen, but not in 5 years, and probably not in 10. Probably will be the last gigantic machine to be fully electrified. But reducing emission by 50%, that's huge, really, really huge. And that's kind of, for me, is the thing where we can really make a difference and in the world. I mean, Danfoss and other companies and so on, just focusing on reducing the emission of what we have. This is for me is the short term, the short term win. But then electrification will come. Of course, we're working hard on that, and it will come for sure. But this is a 30 years journey. It's not a 5 years journey.
Yeah, it's an interesting you touch on that. And again, the event we're at was specifically around energy efficiency. And I think so often everybody's looking for the silver bullets or the game-changing technologies. And of course, they're cool and we look forward to those. But so much of what we do in buildings, in construction, in pretty much most aspects of our life, transportation, there's just huge inefficiencies that those marginal gains can make big difference. If you can, as you say, make 10% improvement, let alone 50% improvement on something which is used all the time in many places, it's a really way of making an impact without necessarily being super, I guess, sexy or groundbreaking in some ways.
Absolutely. I think it's a great example. It's coming from my colleagues in climate solutions, where we hear the discussion very often. Is that there are many groundbreaking technologies to reduce emission, and heating, housing, or heating in general is one of the causes of pollution. So you can really reduce a lot to work on that. But sometimes really just using everywhere thermostat, which is like a basic technology that we have since many years. There's still many places we don't use thermostat. Thermostat will reduce just alone the emissions by 30% without doing anything else. And so there are things, if you want to work on short term, there are things you can do and make a difference. And of course, sometimes if you don't do it with regulation, is very difficult, because then the people it takes time really to, you have the more people more sensible, people are sensible. But if you want to, in an entire city or in an entire region, really to reduce emission, if you don't have some kind of regulation and say, okay, now on excavator, you need to reduce emission, like, you need to have a Euro 6 or whatever that you need to reduce the emission. And then you will go with some technology that reduce the emission. And the same will be for heating and so on. So you need some kind of regulation. Otherwise you don't have this effect. But the other technologies that to reduce emissions are available, in many cases are ready today to make a difference tomorrow.
It's around behavior change. It's a good point you make there. As you say, it's so hard, and it shouldn't be given what's going on in the world, but it's so hard to have huge parts of the population transition and change the behaviors, when clearly those of us who live in this bubble do these things. But for majority of people, it's either more challenging, or they don't know, or they don't care, or whatever it is. But like you say, something needs to drive these behaviors. Listen, Domenico, it's been brilliant to spend some time with you. Thanks for sharing some of the innovations, incubations, and work that Danfoss does, and outside of the organization, of course. So it's great that we had a chance to catch up, and thanks very much for sharing your journey so far. People can obviously log on to the episode pages and find some links to Editron, to Danfoss, and to Domenico, and obviously reach out if you have some thoughts, or if you want any, again, to make some connections. But for now, Domenico, thanks very much for joining us.
Thank you so much. It was really a pleasure.